Yes, can everyone hear me? Good evening, council members. Councilmember Fan, not present. Councilmember Montano. Councilmember Montano.
Here, sorry.
Okay, we hear you. You're present. Councilmember Dominguez. Councilmember Dominguez, if you would unmute your phone.
Thank you. Present.
Okay, we hear you. Vice Mayor Nunez.
I'm here.
And our mayor is absent.
So now if we could do the Pledge of Allegiance. And Chris, since you're standing already, could you lead us?
Sure. If you want to turn, let's say to your left, and we'll begin. I pledge of allegiance
Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag
to the flag
of the United States
of
of
the
America
United States of America,
and to the republic
to the republic
And to the republic
for which it stands,
for which it stands, a nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible, with
indivisible.
liberty and justice for all.
justice for all.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda.
So move.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded. So do we need a roll call on the agenda, Chris?
We do, and I'm happy
Okay.
to do that. Councilmember Montano,
Here.
Councilmember Dominguez,
Yes.
and Vice Mayor Nunez.
Yes. Then the conflict of interest.
So at this time, I'd ask the Vice Mayor and our two council members whether he or she has any financial or personal conflict of interest related to any of the items on tonight's agenda for the special meeting. And we'll start at the end. Councilmember Montano,
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
just if you have any financial or personal conflict of
Oh,
interest.
no.
Councilmember Dominguez
None.
and Vice Mayor Nunez.
None.
Let the record reflect none. Thank you.
Okay, so now the public forum. So Mary, do you want to read the paragraph for me, please?
I certainly can. For the public forum, anyone who's interested in providing comments at this meeting shall submit those in writing to the following email: publiccomment@ci.milpitas.ca.gov. Viewers are invited to address the Vice Mayor and City Council members on any subject not on tonight's agenda. Speakers may submit written comments to be read aloud. Those are limited to 3 minutes or less. As an item not listed on the agenda, no response is required from the city staff or the council, and no action can be taken. Council may instruct the city manager to place the item on a future meeting agenda. So if
And
the
so
Vice
we're
Mayor,
Go ahead.
if you'll allow me, you do have one public comment that has been submitted. If you're ready, I'll go ahead and read that to you.
Please.
I'll assume the time is 3 minutes unless you direct differently. Is that correct?
1 minute, please.
Oh, 1 minute. All right. Let me turn my timer on then. Okay. A comment is submitted. It says, "Good evening. My name is Yoli Garcia, 864 Founders Lane. At your city council budget meeting, I was very disappointed to learn that the Pines parking program was not going to be funded. Recently, I've seen the neighborhood streets just across from the Apex and Elara apartment buildings, and no way all those cars are from the Pines residents. My suggestion on getting funding for the parking program would be to add parking charges to the Apex apartments, Elara apartments, and to all the other building development going on in that area of Milpitas. Development on South Able Street and South Main Street from Great Mall Parkway to Montague Expressway. I will be doing more homework on this project, and I will share with the city council in the hope that as a community, we can come up with funds and options to get the Pines parking program going. This was a promise made to our Pines neighbors and one that we should very much try to keep. Thank you."
Thank you. So why don't we go right then to, since you have no more, to item agenda number 1. Receive a report providing and then provide directions to staff. Is that you, Ashwini, that's going to be given it, or Steve?
And I just, maybe just a quick brief intro
Sure.
to this. And actually, this and the other item as well, and the whole purpose for having this meeting. Staff has been responding to the COVID items and COVID impacts to the city and to the community, as well as the city council in terms of working together with staff. And really right through the weekend, we've been working on items to bring forth information that's very up to date. So in doing that, we set this special meeting, which had less notice because of the urgency of these items. So with that, I just wanted to let you know that staff has actually worked through the weekend, Monday, and possibly even some of the information in the presentation today as information continues to come each day on these items. So this first item dealing with the testing that we've heard from the council, guidance on face coverings, community partnerships on face coverings, food distribution, and even any other items that you might want to bring up. This is a perfect time for you to let us know, for us to get feedback from you, direction from you. So we're all on the same page as to what we're all doing to combat the impacts from COVID-19. So with that, I'll turn it over to our Assistant City Manager, Ashwini Kantak, and she'll take you through this first presentation.
And if I could, before you start, Ashwini, just to make sure that we have sufficient time, I'd like to allow Ashwini to get through her whole report. And in this format, I can't see persons' hands. And I'm not sure I'm going to be able to see as your hands go up, but just make sure that if you're going to want to, I'm going to make sure everybody gets to have an opportunity afterwards. If you are going to want to talk in a certain order, we can discuss that right afterwards, but everyone will have the same amount of time afterwards. So Ashwini, I just want to make sure you get through all of yours.
So what you're saying, Bob, so what you're saying is just to have her do her presentation all the way through, no questions till after.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, but everybody will have a chance to talk afterwards.
Great.
Okay,
Thank you,
go
Vice
right
Mayor.
ahead.
Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So good evening, Vice Mayor and City Council members. My next slide, please. So just a brief background, as we're all well aware, the current shelter in place is effective through May 3rd. We do not yet have information as to whether that will end on May 3rd or be extended. The county has issued guidance strongly urging individuals to wear face coverings in public due to a high percentage of asymptomatic transmissions. The agenda report that you have in front of you had information as of April 17th, but the county has updated its website yesterday. So as of April 20th, there are now 62 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Milpitas and more than 1,900 cases in the county. Next slide, please. So at the April 7th meeting, Council provided direction to staff to agendize 3 COVID-19 related items at the next Council meeting. Given the time sensitivity and the staff work already underway, staff is presenting additional information on these requests today, and we look forward to any other direction or input you may have on these items, as well as any other COVID-19 related items. So the 3 that we talked about on April 7th, one was Councilmember Phan's request to look at establishing a COVID-19 testing site in Milpitas, Councilmember Montano's request for staff to research a Los Angeles County order related to face coverings and to explore similar guidance in Milpitas. And then Councilmember Dominguez's request for staff to enable the donation of face coverings through community organizations, provided that no significant staff work would be required. I'll just wait for the next slide to come up. Mike, slide 4, please. So on April 15, this is related to the testing site in Milpitas. As you're aware, on April 15th, the County Division of Hospitals and Clinics actually opened a COVID-19 testing site at the Milpitas Sports Center, and city staff is providing some limited support at this site. Testing is available for Valley Medical Center patients only and is administered by Valley Medical Center nurses. Milpitas residents who are currently not part of another healthcare system like Kaiser or Sutter Health can call for an appointment if they meet the screening criteria. Testing is being prioritized for people with symptoms, people exposed to COVID-19 patients, and also people with several underlying health conditions. They are currently targeting 20 tests per day with a potential ramp up to 40 tests in the future. Now, per information that is posted on the county's website, the county's public health lab is able to run a maximum of 100 tests per day. The tests here at this testing center are actually being run at the hospital lab. And then their current focus is to ensure that testing is done for hospitalized patients as well as people who live or work in high-risk settings such as long-term care facilities, healthcare professionals, and first responders. Now, for a larger testing effort, the county is relying on large commercial labs who have begun testing and partnering with healthcare systems. One such example is Project Baseline, run by Verily, which is a subsidiary of Alphabet, Google's parent company. Project Baseline has partnered with the state of California to expand access to COVID-19 screening and testing. A drive-through site has been set up at the Santa Clara County Fairgrounds in San Jose. Testing is only available to pre-screened patients with appointments. Testing is free, and all Milpitas residents can get tested if they meet the screening criteria. Additionally, other healthcare providers such as Kaiser Permanente and Sutter Health have also started offering testing for their patients. However, at this time, testing is not being offered by any healthcare facilities in Milpitas. So they will make appointments, though, for testing to be done at other locations. As of April 19, 19,463 people in Santa Clara County have been tested for COVID-19, so just under 1%. And out of that, 1,922 have tested positive. Next slide, please. The other way. So staff also looked at testing being done by different cities. So the cities of Fremont and Hayward have testing sites that provide free testing for the general public, also based on certain criteria. The Hayward testing site opened on March 23rd, and the Fremont testing site opened on April 3rd. Both sites provide testing for anyone with symptoms, typically prioritizing first responders as well as healthcare personnel. The cities are fronting the money with the goal of getting reimbursed by FEMA. Tests are being administered by their staff and run by a private company. Now, in order for Milpitas to follow a similar model, there are several factors that need to be considered. The first is funding. Funding would be needed for the purchase of tests and for resources to administer the tests. The cost of each administered test is estimated to be about $85. Additionally, the cost of fire, paramedics, and other city staff would need to be factored in. Depending on number of tests, this could range from $25,000 to $35,000 per day. A portion of these costs may be eligible for reimbursement through FEMA, as discussed above. However, the city would be taking on a high financial risk in times of fiscal uncertainty. Additionally, we have to think about resources. So who will administer the test? The Milpitas Fire Department does not have adequate capacity to administer these tests, even if paramedics were approved to provide this service. Thus, a partnership will be needed with other fire departments and/or healthcare entities to provide this testing. Also, partnerships with local companies could provide funding and testing resources and would be beneficial to the city. However, these would also require an investment of staff time and likely some city resources and funding. Next slide, please. So given the many considerations I just covered and the fact that testing does remain a key priority in the fight against this pandemic, staff recommends continuing discussions with the county at both the elected officials as well as staff levels and encouraging the county to take on a larger role. The city can continue to be a key partner with the county in facilitating widespread testing by continuing to make the Milpitas Sports Center site available for testing, providing staffing support, and also facilitating partnerships with local companies to enable additional testing and also to supplement the county lab's testing capacity. So in summary, for Milpitas residents, they can currently get tested through their healthcare providers, through Valley Medical if they do not have a healthcare provider, or through Verily, which is free. People will have to meet certain screening criteria in order to get tested. So that's common across all testing sites. Next slide, please. So moving on to the next topic, which is face covering. So on April 7th, as I mentioned earlier, Council directed us to bring back information on a Los Angeles County order mandating face covering and also recommendations for what the city could do in this area. So the LA order was adopted on April 7th and became effective on April 10th. It requires employers of non-medical essential businesses to provide workers with cloth face coverings that shield their mouth and nose, or to provide reimbursement to employees for the cost of purchasing one. It also allows non-medical essential businesses to actually refuse service to customers who do not wear face coverings. The order, in addition to face coverings, also includes certain social distancing and hygiene requirements for businesses, and failure to comply with this order constitutes a misdemeanor subject to fines and imprisonment. Currently, there are also several states and other counties and cities that have issued mandatory orders related to face coverings. Next slide, please. So in our county, Santa Clara County has issued guidance strongly urging the use of face coverings, but has not mandated it due to concerns about enforcement. Now, face coverings can be bandanas, scarves, towels, any other pieces of cloth or fabric, or to be worn over the mouth and nose. Medical masks such as N95 and surgical masks are not to be used. They're to be prioritized for first responders and medical staff according to the county guidance. The county has also stated that face coverings are especially important for activities such as doctor appointments, grocery shopping, pharmacy visits, and riding on public transit. In other words, anytime you have to be in close proximity with other people. It does not recommend wearing masks while exercising, or for children under 6 years of age, or for anyone with breathing difficulties. And again, face coverings are to be used in conjunction with social distancing protocols. Next slide, please. So since April 3rd, the city has been sharing CDC and county guidance on face coverings, as well as its own developed messaging through its website and social media sites. In terms of going forward, the city has two options. We can continue to share guidance and strongly urge use of face coverings to raise awareness about their importance to slow COVID-19 transmission, or the city could also mandate face coverings under its general police powers related to public health, safety, and welfare, as long as this regulation is not in conflict with any other general or state laws. Next slide, please. So today, if the City Council did wish to mandate the use of face coverings, here's some next steps that would be required. The city's Emergency Services Director, which is the city manager, could issue a regulation pursuant to the Milpitas Municipal Code. And in terms of enforcement, it could be enforced by the city's existing civil administrative citation provisions that are contained in the municipal code, which imposes fines of $100 for the first violation, $200 for the second, and $500 for the third. It could also be enforced criminally under the city's existing provisions that are contained in the municipal code. Next slide, please. We wanted to cover a little bit about community partnerships. There's actually been a lot of effort on this front. And the city has been reaching out to several nonprofits to facilitate the provision of services in the community for those in need. So for example, the city is working with Milpitas Unified School District, Milpitas Food Pantry, as well as Second Harvest Food Bank, and various other community organizations to make food and groceries available to those in need. The city has also facilitated some information sharing about community organizations providing face coverings and other services. And we will continue this effort and will play a key role in making information available to the community through a variety of means and in multiple languages. Next slide, please. So the fiscal impact of what we are doing currently, and if we were to look at doing something different going forward. So as mentioned earlier, we are providing some staff support to the current testing site. Approximate costs are about $1,100 per day. We will be seeking reimbursement from FEMA. FEMA typically reimburses incremental costs, so additional contract labor costs or overtime for up to 75%, and in some cases up to 90% of the cost. And then, as you're probably all following closely, the Senate did pass another stimulus bill. It's for $480, $80 billion. And it's likely to pass in the House on Thursday. It does provide additional funding for testing, so we will be following that closely. Battalion Chief Maloon and I actually had a call with several county staff this afternoon, and we have committed to staying closely in touch, following what the funding, once it becomes available, what it's going to be used for, and see how we can partner further on the testing site in Milpitas related to that. So that concludes my presentation. Next slide, please. We just ask council to accept the report and to provide direction to staff on all the various topics that we covered and any other additional topics related to COVID-19. We're happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could we go back to, I want to make sure that I give opportunity for the council to weigh in on the testing, the mandatory face covering, and then the third one I thought was the program, let me see. There was one
Community
that,
partnership.
yes. So let's take them in that order, at least those three, and then anything new that may come up. So the testing, I think you said, was brought up by Council Member Fan, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'd like to start there, and only because I can't really see anything at this point. So Anthony, did you have any questions? Then I'm just going to work from you. And then if we were sitting at the dais, work your way back towards me. Anthony, Carmen, Karina, then me.
Yeah, so I'd like for us to continue working with the county and our community stakeholders in the private sector to expand testing capacity and make it more accessible. I think right now, as you mentioned, this is limited to people in the county health system. I know that there are a number of people who aren't in the county health system that are having difficulties getting access to the appropriate testing accommodations. So can you go back or go over briefly again what the city of Fremont is doing and how that method would or what that would entail, a kind of program like Fremont's?
Sure, happy to do that, Councilmember Fan. So both Fremont and Hayward, at this point, the cities are fronting the money for the cost of the test, as well
what is
as
that
the cost. So they started out, and Battalion Chief Maloon's here too, so he may also chime in, but they started out with over $100 per test. They're at, I think, $75 now per test. In our discussions with a local company, Igenic, we could have tests available for $85 per test. That's the cost of the test and the running of the test as well. So would you like me to continue with other considerations?
Hello?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
yes.
Yeah, so is this cost being reimbursed?
So that's what they're hoping. Both Fremont and Hayward are hoping to get all of these, not all of these costs, but a portion of those costs reimbursed. At this point, it's not clear because FEMA generally does reimburse. It has certain criteria for reimbursement, especially for the staffing costs. It only reimburses incremental staffing costs like overtime and additional contract labor costs. So for example, if you had staff on your payroll that were going to be paid anyway, you may not be able to get reimbursement from FEMA. So those are things we would have to work through. But at this point, Fremont and Hayward have kind of taken that risk on that they may not get reimbursed for everything or, for a large portion.
Now, are we working off of policy prior to the CARES Act, or is this, are there provisions in the CARES Act that would relate to the cost of reimbursements?
We are tracking it closely, and I'll ask Walter as well to come on as a panelist so he can respond. So we are tracking the guidelines right now. Now, of course, with the new stimulus bill and additional funding for testing, there may be some different requirements and there may be more flexibility in funding for that. But Walter, do you want to add to that?
Okay. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, Councilmember Fan, oops, I'm echoing now. Hold on. Okay, this is echo gone? Yes. So we looked at several grants which the federal government provides. One of it is offered by the Health and Human Services Department. And unfortunately, the way we understand the grant provisions at this time is those kind of funds, which would be for medical facilities, are only granted to counties, but not to cities. There's some limitations there. And from the FEMA requirements, indeed, they are, as stated right now, which is typical what FEMA offers, 75% of incremental cost for labor.
Can you repeat that? 75%, what was that?
It's 75% of incremental cost. So what that means is if we have, let's say, a firefighter, paramedic working overtime at the facility, we will most likely get that reimbursed. But if we have a maintenance worker or a recreation person working at the facility during regular times, or even a firefighter during regular times, those costs will not be reimbursed.
Okay, but you mentioned earlier this, what was that private company that we're working with, or we're looking into partnering with?
The local company, Igenic.
Yeah, so, if we went that route and partnered with them, then that would meet, would that not meet the provisions then? Because, this is not employees that we were going to pay anyways. This is, like, it's not labor that's already available.
Igenic wouldn't administer the test. They don't have that capability. So they would just provide us with the test and then they would run it in their lab.
Okay, well, I'd like us to explore the administration of the tests. I think currently there's a lot of people that also need the work right now. And if that work is something that we can do on our end to actually save some lives here, I'm comfortable with that. Completely acknowledging that the funds may or may not be reimbursed. I think that they will be, but you know, at the end of the day, that's you know, for staff to do some more research on. So those are my thoughts.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chief, did you kept getting closer to the mic. I don't know if you wanted to say something or.
Just that Ashwini and I we continue our ongoing efforts to explore our options with regards to a testing site locally. Igenic will provide the tests and they'll process the tests as well in their lab, but they do charge. So it's not a free test that they provide. It's actually a fairly low cost test compared to some of the other tests that are on the market. But you're probably still looking at, even for 100 tests a day, probably anywhere from $10,000 to $18,000 per day.
Okay.
For that administration. But I talked to Alex today about reaching out with and exploring partnerships possibly with some of our local large businesses. And it's an ongoing effort. We're very keen to have one and get something set up here. So we'll continue to work that direction.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councilmember Montano, did you have any questions?
Yeah, I had a few questions.
Okay.
So thank you, Ashwini, for doing that presentation. Also, I just wanted to let y'all know that Kaiser also does testing in the city of Milpitas. The only thing is that they do testing just for their members, and there's a lot of members that are under Kaiser, including us. I like the idea of a testing site. However, when I heard the numbers, it just blew me away. I said, whoa, that's way, it's so expensive. I mean, and I know we are in a recession, early stages of a recession. And I didn't know, I thought, like I said, it's a good idea, but I was under the assumption that this county was going to pay for this. That was my initial, and then now I'm finding out that they're not going to pay for it, right? Well, somebody's talking, right? So I just want that clarification, Ashwini. So the city, we have to pay for everything. The county is not paying for this. So I just want clarification. Is that correct?
So Councilmember Montano, the county is paying for the testing right now. If we wanted to make it more widely available or ramp up the testing significantly, and we were going to resource that, then that's what we would be on the hook for. But right now, the testing,
that would be under
the county is.
That would be what? I didn't hear you.
So if we were to ramp, like if we were to go to a lot more tests per day than what is currently planned for, and if we were to make it more widely available, so to non-Valley Med patients, and we were to take on that responsibility as a city, then that's what we would have to fund. But right now, the testing site is being funded by the county.
Yeah, okay. And can you give me a number, how much that would be? Oh, well, let me backtrack. This is just for Milpitas residents, or is for anybody and everybody?
It's for anybody, right? The testing site right now is for Valley Med patients. And so that includes Milpitas residents, but it could include anybody else across the county as well.
Yeah, but I'm saying if we open up our own testing site, it's open to anybody. Anybody, the whole state, they wanted to come. If I'm talking about if Fremont people wanted to come to the site to get tested, if
that's up to us, I would assume.
Berryessa, San Jose, anybody, right?
I think that we would have to have that discussion as to whether we want to make it only available for Milpitas residents. Some of the other sites that are put up, like for example, the Verily one is available to everybody, including Milpitas residents, even though it's in San Jose, and it is free. It's available to all county residents.
Did you say the Beverly one? What?
It's called Verily, VERILY. It's a subsidiary of Alphabet, which is Google's parent company. And people can go sign up. It's called Project Baseline. People can go sign up, go through some screening criteria and get tested for free. It's a drive-through testing site at the Santa Clara County Fairgrounds in San Jose.
And you say that Google is paying for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're getting some state funding. They've partnered with the state on that. So it's a combination of funding, but it is free. So those are the options for Milpitas residents right now. They could go through Valley Med, through their healthcare provider, or through that Project Baseline.
Okay. Yeah, it's just, can you give me that number again, how much it would cost?
So it's an estimate based on kind of number of tests. What we came up with a ballpark of 25 to 35,000 per day, depending on how many tests we were able to run. If we assumed 100 tests and a certain level of staffing. The one thing is we don't have enough paramedics to administer it. So we would have to partner with others, either other fire departments or nurses from clinics to be able to administer so many tests.
Okay.
The county does not have more capacity.
Okay, and the other question is, I've heard somewhere, somehow, that anybody that gets tested or goes to the hospital, they will not have to pay if they can't afford it. Is that true, or did I just mishear it? Or with testing, they don't have to pay for testing. Wasn't
No,
that a state mandate or something?
No, I think different healthcare systems. So again, Valley Medical, if you do not have a healthcare provider, you can sign up to Valley and get an appointment, and that'll be free. But if you belong to a healthcare system, you have currently a physician, they are billing you for it. That's what we heard from the county today. You are getting billed for it.
Not the county, but the county is billing?
The county is not, but if, like, for example, if you were a Sutter Health or patient, you would actually get billed. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what the county told us today. The
Kaiser doesn't. Kaiser, because I just spoke to the guy today, and they don't. It's their members, or if the members, they don't get paid. You just have to pay your copay or whatever for the medication or for the
That's
visit.
right.
But you don't have to pay.
That's
right. Okay. So yeah, I think that's just all the questions I have for now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman Montano. So I see the mayor's here. So let me, if I could, Rick, just finish the last one, and then I'm going to hand it over to you.
Sounds great. Thanks, Bob.
And okay, so that would be Councilmember Dominguez, if you have any questions on this.
Yes, thank you so much, Vice Mayor. I had a couple of questions. I'm just trying to understand the project because I believe that in March, we got an email from the city manager that the county was asking us to partner to open this site. Is that the same? Is that this project, Steve?
Yes, it is.
Okay, got it. So that makes a lot of sense. So the county actually then reached out to us to partner, and that's why the county's paying for the test. Is that right?
I believe actually it started out with, we have materials, we already have an agreement. So for certain materials or staging materials to set up in a emergency. So this happens to be the pandemic, which is a little different than what we thought, but there were tents and other facilities and storage through a prearranged agreement. So we started a discussion with that, and that our site was available, which it already was because of the storage of those materials. And from there, we started talking about the pandemic and testing. So I think from there, I think Ashwini can talk to you more directly about how this transpired into the Valley Medical Center testing itself.
Okay, perfect. Okay, no, that makes sense. So I was a little confused because at first I thought it was something I was being led by the city, but it sounds like this was the project that came before us, that email that came before us in March. So we were already looking at it. So that makes sense why the city, I mean, the county is paying for it. So if we expanded, then we would have to accrue those costs. So thank you so much for that. The other question that I would have would be if we did extend the program, if maybe you could find out if we could have CNAs. I could assume they could help staff the site because I do understand the shortage of staff, but I know there's been a question around CNAs, if they have the ability to help staff these kinds of sites. So maybe we could look into that. I would greatly appreciate it. I think that's all that I have in terms of.
Council member, could you explain that a little bit so the rest of us could understand what that is?
Yeah, so there's different certifications. Most of us know doctors, nurses that are the frontline staff, but there's also certified nursing assistants. And so I'm wondering if they would be able to administer the testing site.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just the nursing assistants that I know a lot of us are asking if they could participate. They do have a very concrete level of training. And so that would be interesting to see if they would be able to help administer the site.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Other than that, I don't have any more questions. Thank you.
Okay. So they covered really all of my questions. And so.
So I have one more too.
Okay.
Yes. I raised my hand, but I don't know if you can see it.
No, I can't see it.
Oh, okay,
so,
then I guess I'll just have
you
to.
go ahead.
But so I like that concept of the CNAs, but I'm just wondering, are they allowed? So I guess first, are they? What does the testing entail? Does that mean you have to put a syringe, or is that just doing swabs? So does anybody know what does the actual testing involve?
Chief Malone, you want to take that? You're muted. Chief Malone.
I have visual props. This is the Igenic testing kit right
Okay.
here. And
Is
it
that a
includes
syringe?
a nasal swab. It's about 7 inches long.
Can you raise it up?
Can you show us where that goes, Jeff?
Okay.
I've had one done. It's not a pleasant experience.
Oh.
So it goes deep, 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 deep back into your sinuses through your nose, and then they put it into the testing medium.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a relatively simple process. This just requires a single nostril swab. When I had mine done, they did both and the back of the throat. It was awful, but so it's a fairly simple process. And something that we can get approval from the county to have our paramedics administer, or obviously the nurses are able to administer it now.
But not CNA so far. And actually, wouldn't it cost us more if we did go with this and we did get CNAs? I think it would cost us more because we have a paramedic there overseeing the CNAs. So it'd probably be double the cost. So I'm just thinking out loud. All right, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. So if I could sort of, at least in my opinion, sum it up for this one issue, it is to continue with what we're doing, but also look into expanding it. But before we do that, bring it back and tell us what the cost is. Because as Walter says, there's a cost to everything. And if we're going to spend $1 here, what are we not going to spend it on someplace else? As we do this, I know you're working on other partnerships with our other large organizations and companies in our city and in the county. As soon as I said spend dollars, suddenly Walter shows up in the corner of my screen. But before we spend any dollars, if you could bring it back so we could see what those costs could be and so we could understand what the impact is. But the fact that we do have a testing station up, I think speaks well of what we're doing in our partnership with the county. That's what I heard. And so it's to continue to research that area that Councilman Fan talked about. And with that, if nobody has any questions about that, I think I can hand it over to the mayor. We can go to number 2, which was the mandatory face covering.
Thank you very
So,
much, Vice Mayor.
okay.
Appreciate you. I dropped in the meeting here. I want to thank everybody for your understanding. I was over at the food bank all day providing meals for the needy. So I appreciate everybody's understanding as I am late to today's special meeting. I just want to put in a couple of things for item number 1. I'm curious to see how the county operation here in Milpitas is doing. To my understanding, believe they have 20 tests per day maximum. I'm sure they're doing 20 a day. If our staff kindly, my only request for agenda item number 1 here, if staff can, if possible, bring back information from the county to see if there's a wait list for those COVID-19 tests. I'm curious to see the demand here in Milpitas for the current testing that's being conducted. That'd be great. Just if the county would be willing to even provide us the number of people that may be waiting for a test here in Milpitas. I would appreciate that for staff. I see Steve nodding his head, and as Ashwin, I see you too there. And so.
So Mayor, they're not quite at 20 yet. They just started last week, and other sites previously, it has taken them a couple of weeks to get to the 20. They do have intentions of moving up to 40 once they get to the 20 tests per day. But again, this is only for their patients. So if other people are calling that are part of another healthcare system, they are referring them to testing sites for under that system. So they're not testing those patients. So there's no wait list at this point per se, and they do have some capacity to ramp up if they do reach the 20.
Fantastic. That's I think positive to hear. Folks in the community are going to their medical provider, and I know the county is really the safety net of our community for folks who may require medical attention. I know the county is the safety net, and so to hear that there are folks who may not need the net is encouraging, but at the same time, I will keep monitoring that. So thank you very much. All righty, moving on here to agenda item number 2, receive staff report.
So Mayor, we're still, we're just going to number 2 of number 1. We're not as fast when you're not with us.
Okay. So where are we at?
So we're now going to the mandatory face covering.
Okay, I see here. Okay, let's move on here to guidance on face coverings. Thank you very much.
Okay, and it was going to be Councilmember Montano, the first one to weigh in on that.
Okay, I see what you're doing here. Okay, Councilmember Montano.
Thank you, Mayor. So as you know, this is a crisis, and a lot of Milpitas is one of the highest level of folks that are contaminated or affected by this virus. I think the last time I saw it was 65. I think we were the 3rd from the top, from San Jose. And then there have been studies that if you have some type of a face covering, you will protect yourself. You're protecting others from yourself when you cough or sneeze or even speak, because we can't see all the molecule, all the droplets when people are talking. And also, as you know, the mayor of LA, now the mayor of Fremont. And I think that we should also take that road. I'm sure you've all been to the grocery store and you see some people with facial coverings, and then you see others that don't. I think it's an extra layer to protect ourselves and the public. For us to get rid of this, to lower the to plateau or to lower the peak, we need to start being more proactive, in my opinion. And I think this would be a good route to take, because I'm going to be honest with you, some people just don't take this serious. And I think this will be a wake-up call, for people. And this will protect lives. So this is why I'm pushing for this. And I'm hoping that all of you will think about passing this executive order from the city council, so that way we can protect our families, protect our citizens from this COVID, because it's a very contagious virus. So.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Montano. Your advocacy for this has been constant from the very beginning, so I thank you.
Thank you,
Next
Mayor.
up here, we have Councilmember Dominguez.
Thank you very much, Mayor, for this time, and thank you, Councilmember Montano, for your words. So I just want to share with the council a little activity that I did this past weekend, and the reason that I did it was because I really wanted to get a sense. I was getting a lot of information, just like many of you, and I wanted to get a sense of what's going on out there. And I've been secluded in my home since the beginning, so due to my parents. So I went out and visited some of the small grocery stores that we have in our community, including, I won't mention names, but there are some of the smaller grocery stores, some of the smaller shopping areas that are still open. And my concern is really for the workers that are working there. I saw different systems. I saw one store that had a balloon, and you literally have to carry with it so they could see which is pretty smart, to see if the balloon is 6 feet from somebody. And if you were close to another balloon, an associate would come and say, hey, you need to be 6 feet apart. It's a mandate from the county. But as much as the grocery stores try to implement these new strategies in their confined space, I saw a lot of people still without the mask. And we know that community transmission is really what is elevating these numbers. In the city of Milpitas, we are seeing a small increments. It's 1 or 2 a day, but that's about 10 a week. And so I am really, really concerned about the community transmission that is happening in our city. The second, again, it's to provide protection not only to those that live in Milpitas, but the ones that work and are out there and that are our essential workers. And so I would love to have this pass, because I do believe we need to protect our essential workers. And many of them are already struggling as it is. Many of them are not earning decent wages. And so we really need to protect them. And so that is why one of the reasons that I would push to pass this. The second thing that I ran into was I went and did a visit to our unhoused encampments in Milpitas. And there was a lot of them on a list that I had. And there was a lot of them that weren't on the list. And in having a conversation with our unhoused community, they're really afraid right now. They're afraid of the community transmission. And they've even admitted that when they go to one gentleman said that when he went to the 7-Eleven, he was really concerned because he didn't know he had COVID-19. He didn't know how to access the testing. He didn't know how to get tested. He had said that he had felt sick, but couldn't confirm it and didn't know how to get help. And so he was even afraid and saying, well, I go to these places, 7-Eleven is one of them, and I go get, water or whatnot, and the community transmission, there's no way for me to have access to face coverings or for me to even follow the shelter in place. And so it goes back to this community transmission and how, as a city, we could really be the forefront of Santa Clara County And I know that Dr. Cody has been stressing it. It feels like every day a little bit more and a little bit more. But we do have neighboring cities who've already implemented this. I believe the city of Fremont is one, and the city of San Francisco is another one. And so I do believe that if we are going to be the center of leading for the city of Milpitas, I would also echo the sentiments of Councilmember Montano, and I will be supporting the motion to make this mandatory. And of course, we could come with regulations, and we have great cities who've already implemented this. And so for me, it's more making sure the mask is being worn when you're going into areas that are being shared. And so again, it's just putting an extra layer of protection. I'm a mom, and as a parent, I'd rather be more safe than sorry. And that's how I raised my child. And I love this city, and I'm being a mom. And I am asking this council to please pass this and make this mandatory. Thank you.
Can I make a comment? Can I make a comment, Mayor?
Councilmember Dominguez. Yeah, we'll go to Councilmember Montano before we go to the Vice Mayor.
So Councilmember Dominguez mentioned about that extra layer, and I'm really glad that she put forth the mask, the free mask to the community with the Rotary and the Lions Club. And as myself, I'm also making masks and donating them. So that's that extra layer. If this passes, you know, if there are most people, you know, I think there's ability to get to wear some kind of face covering. But if there are those that don't have, we have that availability. And thank you for that thoughtful thinking of being proactive and having the city, no, not the city, but having the city be a venue to guide people to where they can get face coverings. So that, you know, that's a shout out to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Montano. Now we're going to the Vice Mayor, Bob Nunez.
Thank you very much. And first, I agree. I think that I've been to, excuse me, Safeway. I've been to the post office. I've been to a number of stores around Home Depot, and I'm amazed at how many persons, once you're inside, don't have masks on, don't know how to measure 6 feet, and how many employees aren't provided the masks, or told if you want, when you have to go find your own, even if they're sold in that store, you have to go buy your own. And I think we do need to provide it for them. I mean, we need to make sure they're provided that kind of equipment. So I am in favor of mandatory face coverings. And having said that, I know that 2 of the service clubs and a number of other organizations in the city are standing up to making them and providing them to those persons that can't afford it. Some of those persons that live in this community really can't afford to go out and buy them, even if it means their inability to go to work. And so I'd like to make sure that when we get to your item next, Councilmember Dominguez, that we find ways, even if we have to put in some of our own money just for the material, that there's enough persons at the high school level that are making them, church groups, other groups, that we can actually provide those for those that can't find them or buy them, so that there's no excuse for persons not to wear them. And what I found out today, when I was with the city manager, is that one size does not fit all. When I was watching a young man, boy who was probably 5 or 6, trying to kick a ball, and trying to wear an adult size mask that would not stay on, only to find out, and I think I probably should have known that, I mean, that you can buy them in all sizes. which means you need to be able to make them in all sizes. Or else as soon as they get out the door, the children just take them off, throw them away because they're tired of picking them up and trying to keep them on. So I'm thankful that we're talking about this, that we are hopefully going to take this step, and that we have to make sure that because someone can't afford either to buy one or the material to make them, that's not going to stop them for caring for their own health or their children's health. So I'm very supportive of this and want to make sure that we take away any reason that persons don't have a face covering.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor Nunez. Very kind and gentle words there. Definitely, I feel your heart with the community. Appreciate you. I would ask you to lower your virtual hand as well. Yeah, definitely. I'm in support of the mask. I know Councilor Montano. I can't tell you how many times I've heard from Councilor Montano's push for this, and Councilor Montano, she got no quit when she knows it's the right thing to do, and this is definitely, I think, in everybody for the most part in the community, the right thing to do. And I want to look to the city manager. I studied other cities, as I always do, for these type of orders. And so, Steve, you're going to sign. Can you explain to all of us, folks tuning in and whatnot, the action, or clarify for me if I don't have it understood correctly? You have as the city manager of Milpitas, you're going to sign some sort of document, right?
Yeah, I think Chris could weigh in, but I will note that yes, in the report we did identify that my service to you as the director of the emergency services operation allows me under the municipal code to enact this into local law. So Chris might be able to explain any details to that.
Yeah, Mayor Tran and Council, City Manager has it completely correct. This is an emergency situation. I think what you've seen in other jurisdictions is that the Director of Emergency Services, which is in our code, the City Manager, and that is the same as most other cities, they will issue essentially an order mandating the requirement. Our code is kind of unique because it does require that the City Council ratify that decision. So what we will do, if it's council direction, we'll work using Los Angeles and Fremont kind of as the models, designed to essentially require face coverings for essential workers at essential businesses, and then also patrons that would be entering into those essential businesses. And we look to take additional provisions from Fremont and Los Angeles and put it into an order document, which would be about, I'd say anywhere from 2 to 3 pages. Our city manager can sign that tomorrow. So it could go into effect essentially on Thursday morning if we wanted to. We'd bring this back to you at your next council meeting just for ratification, but it would be in effect this week. And then if council ratifies that at your next meeting, it would stay into effect for the duration of the emergency. But I'm happy to answer any other questions that council has. And I also wanted to thank Councilmember Montano for her leadership on this issue. She had asked the question before, and we finally researched the issue. So thank you for bringing that to my attention.
So thank you, Chris. I just, yeah, just want to concur with Mayor. I just felt it was the right thing to do because I see so many people that are suffering because of this. It's a respiratory illness. I mean, people can't breathe, and it's like somebody's choking to death. And if we can do our little part, but to prevent people from suffering physically with this disease, I think we're doing a good thing, a good service to the public. It's just right now, a lot of people are not taking it serious, and with this, I think people will listen. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Very good points. Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Okay, well, I don't see any further virtual hands. So we'll look, actually, we'll do a motion for this. Why not? I want to look for Councilmember Montana. You want to make the motion?
Yeah, sure will. So I'd like to make a motion that we pass this executive order to ban mask and have this
guidance on face coverings.
have the staff and the city manager and and our city attorney do the research and put something forward so we can ratify it. Thank you.
With all due respect, my hand is up, Mayor.
Okay, yeah, I see that now. Councilmember Dominguez with the virtual hand, yes.
Thank you. I'm so sorry, Councilmember Montano. I had my hand up before because I just have one question before moving the motion forward. Chris, is it possible? I know that other cities are doing the fines, so they're doing, 100, 200 or whatnot. Could possibly Councilmember Montano, as the maker of the motion, I was just wondering, because we do have low income families in Milpitas who are already struggling, and I wouldn't want this to be another burden on them, but I also want to hold them accountable, right? As if they are not wearing the face coverings. Would we be able to explore maybe other ways? Like, I know the city of San Jose does library fines equivalent to volunteer work. So if they can't pay the fine, they could volunteer once we get this motion lifted. Councilwoman Montano, is that something that you would be able to include in this motion, just to explore other ways and maybe have certain requirements? Like if they make less than a certain amount of money, they would be able to qualify for this. And then that way we're not putting an extra financial burden on those families.
Yeah, actually, that's a good idea. Some type of community service, they would have to prove that they can't afford to pay the fine. And but just to be clear, that's what makes people listen, is when you hit them in the pocketbook.
Yeah,
that's when. But yes, that would be another alternative. Community service would be an excellent way of alleviating some of that hardship, economic hardship.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Mayor, for the time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I just want to check in with the city attorney. Are we able to provide punishment or?
Yeah, so if council direction tonight is to essentially adopt a regulation, which our city manager would issue likely tomorrow, yes, there would be essentially an enforcement aspect to it. What I'd recommend is, with the direction I think we just heard from the two council members, what I'd prefer to do is have it enforced through our administrative citation process, which is essentially our code enforcement officers or additional officers, depending on what we need and whoever is available from.
That's correct. Yeah.
But they would issue essentially fines. The way we usually do administrative citation is usually that first kind of misstep by somebody is a warning, so that we educate. And then if it continues, then we'd escalate looking at the fines. I'll see if our existing code enforcement program has some sort of low income or anyone who's struggling financially during this period with some sort of waiver of the amounts. And so we'll see if we can implement that. If not, I'll bring back additional research for the council at your next meeting when you ratify essentially the decision.
And I'm glad you clarified that, Chris. Usually we give them a warning, and usually that warning it does the trick. So thank you.
Very well. Great discussion. I appreciate it all. Next up here, we have a virtual hand from Councilmember Fan.
Yes, thank you. I think at this time, I'm not really for that extra burden, as Councilmember Dominguez said, especially on a lot of the low-income families. For me, it's not so much fines. I don't think we should be really slapping fines on people. The whole point of this thing is so that people put on the masks. So if they're not putting on the masks, then we make sure that they actually have access to the masks. And if they really can't afford one, or they just can't get access to one, we can just give them a mask. Like I just don't think that during this time that it's appropriate for us to be putting fines on something like this. I think certainly it's appropriate if people are breaking the quarantine. For example, if people are being reckless and going out there doing non-essential stuff, then yeah, we should impose fines on that, because that is irresponsible to the public safety. But however, something like this where somebody just doesn't have a mask, they don't know current events, they don't know that there's a requirement to put on the masks, or they just can't find them because it is difficult to purchase them, then I don't think fines would be appropriate. So on my end, just for my 2 cents, is that like, if they don't have a mask, we get them a mask. We have we'll order an inventory, because we should always have an inventory available in the first place.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Fan. With the diverse discussion happening, I appreciate all vantage points. Okay, very well. I'm looking for any further virtual hands. I see some sort of hand in Councilmember Fan's background, but that's not his hand. It's like a type of creature, I'm not sure, but we'll go to Councilmember Montano.
So what is it you're asking for right now then?
Looking for the motion, Councilmember Montano. How about you kick it off for us?
So yeah, I'd like to make, I thought I had already made it, so.
Yeah.
I second.
Okay, we have, and Chris, you're good? We got everything?
Thank you, Mayor. I think based on Councilmember Fan's comments, and I think what we've heard from the other 2 council members about a hardship concern, we'll look to build in some language that doesn't automatically fine people, and that there is some steps involved in the process to make sure they have what they need essentially to comply.
Yeah, and then the beauty of it, the beauty of this is that we have that mask, face covering program, and so I guess if someone gets caught not wearing one, we can refer them, hey, well, we have this club and this club, and or maybe the officers, the community patrol officers, whoever is giving the citation or the warning, can give them a mask. Maybe they can have some on hand, or direct them to get one. So we'll figure it out. But yeah, so I'd like to make a motion to move forward, have staff move forward with this, and then Councilmember Dominguez seconded.
Fantastic. All right. We're doing the virtual meeting. I got to do a roll call. So we have a motion by Councilmember Montano, a second by Councilmember Dominguez. All in favor through the roll call. Councilmember Fan.
Aye.
Councilmember Montano.
Aye.
Councilmember Dominguez.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bob Nunez.
Aye.
And to myself, it'll be an aye. The motion is carried. And so that's the guidance for on face coverings. Fantastic. I think that's very pleased and thankful that the council is making a significant public service to the community. Next up here, let's see. Speaking of some face coverings, community partnerships on face coverings and food distribution. Ashwini, are we be guiding us here?
Mayor, I already did the presentation, so I think at this point we're looking for any input from council.
Okay, we might have that. Thank you very much, Ashwini. I'll look to the council here. Councilmember Montano, I do see your virtual hand.
Oh no, I forgot to lower my hand.
Yeah, it's still, we're trying to get used to this, right? I think this new normal is not normal yet to me, but I'm sure others feels the same. Well, I'll look to my colleagues here. Councilmember Dominguez.
Thank you so much, Mayor, for the time. And so now that we have direction in terms of the new regulations in place for face coverings, I think this program is needed more than ever, and making sure, again, that we are able to fulfill the need of face coverings for our community. I do know that there's been, thank you so much for the presentation and for staff's time. I've seen the wonderful flyer. I know you guys have moved forward a partnership with 2 of our clubs, and I believe that there's even room to do more partnerships with not only, I believe it's a high school group with, I believe her name's Amy, but definitely making sure that we are, whoever wants to make a mask, that they have the fabric and the materials to make the mask. And so I know that at this time, if maybe we could just direct staff to see what that cost would be, from a presentation that I believe it was at Rotary.
Correct.
There was a donation that was made by Rotary to the Project Maskify, in which the founder, which is one of our high school students, shared that with the $250 that they had received as a donation, they were actually able to do quite a bit, which was, it was almost 1,000 masks. And so just to give the council an idea of cost estimates, and I know that there's a couple of community members out there who want to donate the masks, the fabric for the space covering. So maybe if we could direct staff to come back and assess the needs and the cost if necessary. I know that I personally have pledged $500 to the project, and making sure that these two organizations have the funding, because it's that important for our community, especially now that we're making it mandatory. And so maybe at this time for me, I definitely want to hear from my colleagues, but I definitely just want to give thanks to all of you who are involved. We're definitely where Milpitas goes, the state goes. And so thank you for being proactive with this, and thanks staff.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Dominguez. Next up, we have Vice Mayor Nunez.
So I first going to remember to lower my hand now. I'm very supportive of this. There are two clubs, both the Lions and the Rotary, that are involved, as well as the student club over at Milpitas High School. We're looking at getting more clubs involved, more youth involved. And the cost we have broken down to anywhere from $1 to $2, depending on who's making them and how they're being made. I think that having persons make them, especially since we are making it mandatory, is a good connection to the community. We donated some of those that were made recently to both the police department, to the fire department, to those working still here at City Hall. Next, I think we're going to be looking now out to the community, to some of those places we saw that Councilman Dominguez, you went to. Those persons that indicated a need. We're hoping to be able to have those students pass some of those out in some fashion. But the whole idea is it's bringing groups together themselves that haven't really had a joint project. And this is having that added effect. So it isn't really a lot of money. So I do want to have staff look at the cost, but it's having so many added benefits. It's amazed me to see how many groups that always had the same vision for this city, but never really sat down and talked about it. Now we're doing that because of this. So I'm very supportive of this. And really the last couple of days spent more time on this issue and how persons have talked about it than about anything else. So I am really very supportive.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor Nunez. Appreciate you. Next up, we have Councilmember Montano.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so I concur with Vice Mayor Nunez. Also, the Ladies Guild at St. John's, they are also distributing masks. Actually, I just made some this morning for them. I think I made about 10 of them. So they're easy to make. They're easy to make. They're very easy to make, and the beauty of it is that when people get together for a common cause, then you don't realize how humanity, when there's an urgency to help people, people come through. I mean, the service clubs in our city are coming through, and the high school students and some of the church groups. So it's amazing. And then our city council is coming through because we really care, and we're trying to stop this dreadful disease because it's really impacting everyone so bad. So anyhow, let's move forward with this. I really am thankful for Dominguez to spearhead this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Montano. Okay, any further requests here?
Is there a motion? I guess.
Yes, I would like to, at this time, move a motion to direct staff to form partnerships with third-party entities in the city of Milpitas, those that have already been identified, and work with Milpitas Unified School District, which is already happening, to ensure that community members are able to comply with the new enforced policies regarding the use of face coverings in the city of Milpitas, and also to explore the costs and bring that back to council to assess. Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Dominguez. We have a second by Vice Mayor Nunez. All in favor, roll call. Councilmember Fan.
Aye.
Councilmember Montano.
Aye.
Councilmember Dominguez.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Nunez.
Yes, aye.
Yes, myself, I as well. The motion is carried. Thank you very much. All righty. Anything else on agenda item 1? I think we've covered much, and so we'll move to agenda. Yes, virtual hand for Councilmember Dominguez.
Thank you so much, Mayor. So that was one part of the community partnership that we had talked about. Another community partnership issue regarding COVID-19 that would I'd like to get some information back. And this might be just moving it forward to the housing subcommittee that we have. And it's regarding an immediate response to housing our unhoused here in Milpitas. So we have identified from the last count 125. For my little experiment, again, it's just a visual assessment. I spoke with about 56, so I don't foresee more than 150, which is good news because it's still doable, right? Where we have a partnership, and I know that the governor is leading that. So I would like at this time, if we could, I would like to move a motion to move direction to staff to work with the housing subcommittee to explore an immediate response to house our unhoused and ensure that they're getting on that county wait list. And if they could bring back some findings to council, and this would be an immediate response to COVID-19, again, to ensure that they have the ability to isolate themselves, to get testing, and hopefully get a home to comply with the social distancing orders that are in place by the county. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Dominguez. I'd like to ask, I hear that you're proposing this solution to house those that are unhoused. Just for some clarification, I want to, and we'll go to the Vice Mayor next. I do see your virtual hand up. My question is, now the governor is looking to house unsheltered persons who have tested positive for COVID-19. Are you proposing that we house only persons that are tested positive for COVID-19 or unsheltered, or are you looking to house all members who are unsheltered, homeless? And in terms of the housing, the governor's pushing for hotels. Are you proposing to push for housing for unsheltered folks in our Milpitas hotels? I'm not sure what you're looking to propose. And so I think a discussion would be due diligence.
Absolutely. And so I want to be respectful of the committee that's in place. And I definitely don't want to, I do believe that when we form committees, we form them because we trust that committee to move forward an issue. And that as a body, we have to come together if we see an issue in Milpitas and then streamline it. So I want to be very, very respectful of both council member. I want to call Vice Mayor Montano and Vice Mayor Nunez, because I do believe that they're doing a great job in that committee. And I mean, I saw it this week. You guys are doing exceptional jobs. And so I definitely want to be respectful of the process. And so at this point, all I'm asking is if on record, we could agree as a body that that's something that needs to be addressed. And the reason for that is because COVID-19, something that I heard from different entities is that the unhoused are living in quote unquote hot zones. And it's not only putting them in jeopardy of COVID-19, it's actually putting our first response members as well as the community at hand at risk, because like Councilmember Montano said, this is something that you breathe, right? So if they're not able to follow the in-sheltered orders from the county, then I do believe we need to address that. And my understanding is that CDBG funding may be coming in. FEMA may be able to reimburse some of the costs if we do place them in hotels. That would probably be, I know Project Room Key is something that has been on everyone's mind, but I definitely want to be very respectful of the committee and want to just make sure that this gets addressed as a member of, as one vote of 5. This is something I saw, and I just don't want to ignore it. And I don't want it to get lost in the conversations, right? And I know sometimes that happens. So again, I just would like some direction to ensure that this is an agenda, this is an item and a discussion that gets agendized into the subcommittee. That would be my motion at this point.
I appreciate that. I'm still unclear as, are you looking to house homeless community members who have tested positive for COVID-19 in our hotels? Is that your proposal?
My proposal at this time is to respect the committee and move a motion. So the motion itself, Mayor Tran, the motion is to move forward a direction to place the conversation of how we are going to respond to the need of unhoused, the 125 Milpitians that live in Milpitas. How are we going to address that need immediately? And I want to put forward this agenda item to be placed into the subcommittee for further discussion.
Okay, so you have no answer. Vice Mayor Nunez.
Yes, so thank you very much, both of you. Number one, and probably the only thing I really have to add is, as usual, staff is in front of both of us, all of us. We had a discussion before our housing committee. I think it was last week, was our housing committee.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Montano. And on our agenda was housing for the homeless. And our first discussion there was to first find out what the number really was, because depending on who you ask, you can get 4 or 5 different numbers. And then to take a look at what is the information that is out there by the county, by the state, by the school district. And so at our next meeting, we'll be discussing, and they'll be sharing, staff will be sharing with us all of that information. So it is on our agenda. We have made no decisions or recommendations as of yet because we're gathering the information. So Sharon really has gotten in front of this and is bringing it to us. And we're going to be meeting again. I think it's in the next week and a half. I believe is the next meeting date. But they are on it, and so I don't believe there's a need for the motion because we already put it on the agenda. It's already on our agenda once, and it'll be there again. But there's no action because we're waiting to get more information from both Robert and Sharon.
And then I'd also like to add, can you hear me?
Yes.
So this COVID has really impacted so many lives economically. So I know the city of San Jose has put a quote unquote freeze on landlords not being able to raise their rent, raise the rents of the tenants. So our city attorney is looking into that. And so we also propose that because we feel that it is there's another word for immoral, but it's just not, it's not,
I think you said
it's not
immoral.
cool, you know, to raise somebody's rent during this time. It's just like, what? So he's looking into that. So we're moving forward, and then, yeah, that's right. I recall now that we're having that discussion about they're looking into the numbers, because yeah, that we have to include everybody with this COVID.
Absolutely. Perfect.
So-
And that is exactly why I don't want to do a motion. I want to be respectful of the work. And because we can't talk, all of us, because of the Brown
That's
Act.
right. That's
Yeah.
right.
This is the, I feel like this was the venue to bring that up. So thank you both for the work that you guys are steering in this committee. And that definitely is a great response to this. And so we don't need a motion. And so thank you so much, Mayor, and for the time. And thank you both members for giving me that update. Because again, it's really hard to have these discussions without violating a Brown Act. We can't do that.
Right.
So I
Right.
definitely don't feel comfortable moving a motion that's gonna overstep the work path that you guys have already created and have spent so many hours. And so in the future, this is maybe what I will do. If that's did this work for you guys? I'm just trying to learn also what's the best way.
No, it does for a couple of reasons. One is that it is difficult to have discussions. Where is Chris?
Where there's
it's
only
difficult.
where there's only two members, it's
Right.
so hard.
Yeah.
Right. It is
So
difficult.
hard.
And what I tell our city manager all the time, look how rigid he is sitting. The only thing moving is his eyes, blinking. That Sharon is an exceptional find for us and does exceptional work. And she is able to be, months ahead of us in the kinds of questions we're going to be asking for our committee. And I think we're lucky for that. And at the same time, now with Walter being in finance, he is able to provide them with the finance questions, answers to those questions much sooner than before. So we then can bring you, Mayor, and the rest of the City Council, not only the questions that are being asked and possible responses, but the consequences of those responses in real time with the fiscal impact of that. So that's what we're trying to do. And so I'm thankful for the question because it shows that we are addressing the questions of the day. And it proves that staff is right in step with us with regard to what are the issues that we should be addressing and bringing back to you.
Thank you.
Well
Thank you
said.
very much, Vice Mayor. Okay, very well. Looking forward to continued leadership over at the Housing Subcommittee. Just when you thought it couldn't get any better. Thank you very much. Okay, any further requests for agenda item number 1? All right, moving on here to agenda item number 2. Let's receive staff report and provide direction on post-COVID-19 recreation and community services programs and events transition plan. And we have our Director of Recreation Services, Milpitas' very own Renee Lorenzen. How you doing?
Good. Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, City Council. So this staff report is intended to provide you all with recommendations for upcoming community events and considerations for responsible service delivery to the public after our shelter-in-place order is lifted in whole or in part, and as our city transitions to end its declared emergency. As you all know, non-essential events and site operations have been temporarily suspended. Many of those suspended programs and services offer not only recreational programs and entertainment, but also childcare, youth and adult enrichment, fitness and wellness, and senior socialization. During our shelter-in-place order, Recreation and Community Services continues to provide essential services to the community through the Senior Nutrition Program, social services through our case manager, the Hope Suicide Prevention Task Force, Department and citywide marketing and communication support, the community-wide efforts related to food distribution. And we've also have limited activities and classes offered through our virtual community center, which as of today had close to 4,000 visits since launch just about 13 days ago. We also are reporting our on-site and off-site programs, general classes, events, and after-school programs have all been suspended during this shelter-in-place order. Slide 3. Upon lifting of this shelter-in-place order, our staff is committed to reinstating programs and services both expeditiously and responsibly. We do expect that when programs, services, and events start to return, that they will not look exactly the same as they have been in the past, and each will be individually evaluated for safety and social distancing considerations in mind. That being said, they may be delivered in different ways based on considerations like when the shelter-in-place order is lifted, when the city's declared emergency is transitioned, long-term protocols for social distancing, and any limitations on large gatherings. Staff continues to monitor the news and information being released from our governor's office and the Santa Clara County Offices of Public Health and the chief executive. For example, just last week, both the governor and county chief executives shared that large gatherings of hundreds or more shouldn't be expected until after August, with even large sporting events maybe not until November at the earliest. Staff is also tracking and contributing to discussions with peer cities on their reopening and transition plans. Recreation departments throughout the state are talking mostly and focusing on public communication strategy, virtual online classes and resources, social distancing measures and what they mean for summer and fall programs, and moving and shifting their virtual, their special events to virtual special events. So now I'd like to go through some of the main program and event topics for the evening, starting with community events. As you all know, event planning takes several months, sometimes up to a year of pre-planning activities, including contracting the necessary talent and services, purchasing of supplies, marketing and communications, and forming partnerships. If the shelter-in-place order was lifted or partially lifted, the likelihood of long-term social distancing protocols and limitations on public gatherings is extremely high. With that in mind, staff is proposing to cancel all in-person events through August and is considering hosting virtual events with your input in limited cases. So at this time, staff is recommending the following approach outlined below for events. The first one is the Memorial Day ceremony. We are proposing to offer that virtually. That's May 25th. We typically get about 200 to 250 people in attendance at that event. Staff is working on an alternate virtual event that would include resources, photos from prior ceremonies, pre-recorded songs, and keynote speeches. Those would all be housed and hosted on the new city's virtual community center and social media pages. We are seeing several cities around the United States taking this approach. Next slide, please. Community events that we've proposed to be canceled. The summer concert series and movies in the parks, which are scheduled for June 19th through August 11th. These events average about 150 to 300 people in average attendance per concert or movie. The summer flag raisings, which are scheduled from April through August. These ceremonies average about 25 to 75 people per ceremony. The council does have an approved list of flags that we would continue to raise on the appropriate day or days, and we would be acknowledging the cultures and the appropriate holidays on the city's social media pages. Milpitas Pride, that was scheduled for June 6th. The event sees an average about 700 people in attendance. Staff is proposing to work with local LGBTQ plus organizations to join a national online campaign at the end of June to celebrate this community with an emphasis on those teens who may be sheltering in an abusive environment, which is a very prevalent national topic at the time. And the 4th of July pool party, concert, and fireworks, which is scheduled for July 4th. This event typically sees an average of 12,000 plus attendees. Staff is proposing to continue its research and development of a virtual 4th of July event for at-home suggest activities and a campaign that promotes patriotism and celebrates the holidays. Several cities are moving towards a virtual 4th of July event due to the concerns of large crowds and social distancing. For fall community events, at this time, staff is planning to continue to monitor the possibility of holding fall events between the months of September and December. Those events are Family Game Night, Oktoberfest and Car Show, Pumpkins in the Park, Veterans Day, Veterans Appreciation Lunch, tree lighting, and milk and cookies with Santa. Slide 7. So similar to the approach used for events, staff is looking at potential deferrals for some of its programs while continuing to explore alternate models to provide recreational opportunities to the community. The next few are some models of programs that are coming up or are currently supposed to be being held. So the first one is the Milpitas Youth Force. That program typically runs February through August. So due to the uncertainty of the shelter-in-place order being lifted, the presumed social distancing and limitations to the planning, along with the uncertainty of the level of work available from participating resident businesses and departments, staff is proposing to develop a different model for MYF in 2020. The alternate program model would continue to promote leadership, job readiness, and self-esteem boosting activities. Alternately, though, the program would be offered in the fall, and the city would seek partnerships with other organizations like the Milpitas Unified School District, local nonprofits, and available and interested Milpitas businesses. The number of students accepted into the fall program, the frequency and type of instruction, and available paid work hours would be subject to recommended social distancing and the state of the local economy. Next slide, please. The Milpitas Community Theater, just before the shelter-in-place order, the production of Annie had begun rehearsal. There are several considerations for this production to continue due to its nature, depending on when this shelter-in-place order is lifted. Program details like safe sizes that allow for social distancing for both the cast, sometimes up to 30 children, as well as the size of the audience would need to be determined. Staff has already met with the show director to discuss alternate show date schedules other than ways to present the show and using cast parents to help brainstorm ideas. And lastly, general classes and programs. Our summer and fall season classes and programs will be monitored with the same considerations for reinstatement and at what level they can return. Next slide, please. So for next steps, staff will continue to closely monitor state and county mandates and continue to engage our city council and our community as we further develop and roll out programs, services, and events, both virtually and in person. Next slide. The cancellation of events, classes, and programs will result in some revenue loss as well as expenditure reductions for the current fiscal year as well as the next fiscal year. Due to the many unknowns at this time, the fiscal year 2021 proposed budget does not assume any reductions in revenues and expenditures related to the cancellation of the events, classes, and programs. But once the impact is known, staff will return with revenue and expense adjustments as part of the 2021 mid-year budget review for council consideration. Next slide, please. So the recommendation tonight is to receive the staff report and provide direction on post-COVID-19 recreation and community services program and events transition plan. That concludes our presentation, and staff is here to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Renee. Appreciate you. And I think the great work over at Recreation Services has been on everybody's mind. It's really our community space and activities and events. And so I thank you. I know you have to make a lot of challenging, difficult leadership decisions all across your department. And so I want to just give you my thanks. And the report has been received by everybody, and we'll look for some direction here. I want to start off here first. It just makes sense completely to cancel or adjust all of our social gatherings. And I really am glad that we are looking towards virtual celebrations of sorts or recognitions or ceremonies. For the Memorial Day ceremony, is it possible we can still have the remembrance chair out there in our Veterans Plaza?
Yes, we can put the chair out. We can take photos of it. We will not encourage people to visit it just for the order of sheltering in place, but we will make an effort to put that out there. And there's a number of very, for lack of a better term, cool virtual memorial ceremonies that are being planned as far as New Jersey that we've been researching. And so I think it'll allow the day to still be relative and poignant for Milpitas.
Thank you so much. I know that would mean a whole lot to our thousands of Milpitas veterans. And although we won't be having the ceremony, we will, our typical ceremony, I know it's important to the vets to really keep certain things going, which are safe. And so that's my one person recommendation for the Memorial Day. My next question is for the flag raisings. I know we won't be having the ceremonies, but can we still raise the flags? Are we?
Yes, and we have been. So the flags will still be raised since we've gone through, I believe, a complete full year of the flags that we're raising now. We have great pictures and video from the prior years that we'll put on our social media pages to continue to celebrate those cultures.
Okay, great. And so for Cesar Chavez Plaza, we will still, the flag will be out there for those. Okay, I just want to start. Yeah. Wanted to make sure I heard correctly. Okay, great. And then I guess my last point here of interest is the 4th of July. I know during challenging times, really pandemic times, if I may, it's more important now than ever to come together, maybe not physically, as Americans. And I know in 60 to 90 days from now, our society will be who knows where. I don't think anybody can really pinpoint where we'll be as Americans 60 to 90 days, which is really the range for the 4th of July. Can we somehow keep open the possibility for fireworks on the 4th of July, and obviously close the Sports Center, Cardoza? I know it doesn't really make complete sense as fireworks typically bring people towards the light, but is it possible to just keep that idea or the fireworks component available? I think it brings hope to our city. Maybe no music, but the fireworks. If we could just keep open the possibility for it, if our society does find itself in a much better place, I would really advocate for keeping America going. I do see folks logging in here, but Renee, is that possible?
So we do need to now let the fireworks provider know whether or not we're going to have a show. So there are some contractual limitations and requirements for the city at this time. We do need to let them know. So the possibility of that, though, I will defer to our Chief of Police, Armando Corpus, to talk about the regulation and the security of that site and fencing that off. So Chief, if you want to speak to that.
Thank you so much. Welcome, Chief. Hey, how you doing?
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council. I have to apologize. As I was transitioning from an attendee to a panelist, I actually lost connection for a brief moment, so I'm not certain as to what the question is or the recommendation there.
Yes, it happens to me too, Chief. Someone they switch you over. I know in and out, but I hear you with the technology. Really, I guess my question or my what I'm advocating for at this time is the 4th of July, and really during challenging times in our nation, in my lifetime, this is probably the second most challenging time with 9/11 and now this in my lifetime. And there's no, I think there's rarely any other times where we are united as Americans, and the 4th of July is a day for that we celebrate our pride in our country. And I want to see if there's two parts here. The first part is to see if we can keep open the possibility of a very, very scaled down 4th of July. It may just be fireworks, no music, parks closed, sports centers closed, Cardozo's closed. Even the streets can be possibly blocked as usual. And just to see the fireworks out there, I want to see if we can keep it alive. I would hate for the idea of the 4th of July and the fireworks to end tonight. We don't know where we'll be in 60 to 90 days as a city, as a country. And I'm hoping to keep alive the fireworks tonight. And the second part would be to actually contact the higher levels of government. It may not even be possible, right? Higher levels of government may say, oh, it's prohibited. And so there's not much we can do about that. And that would take some staff resources. But back to you, Chief. I guess we wanted to connect with you, any possible concerns.
So from the public safety aspect, what I would offer is, if other cities cancel their events and we continue to host ours, we're going to see a significant increase in the people in Milpitas. And the reason I say that is I could refer back to the recession, where there were other cities that canceled their events, and we ended up with about 20 to 30,000 people attending our event that we hosted. And so my concern would be we would see large people showing up, even though it isn't intended to be attended like that. If we were to host such events, or we were to host it without expecting people to be in our parks, I would actually request that we erect fencing around Cardozo Park to ensure there's no congregation there. We would have to secure fencing around the sports complex as well. Because even though it's not going to be marketed for attendance, we're going to get people attending. We usually have a significant police deployment for the event, not so much because we expect something bad to happen, but as you see violence across the country and across the world happening at highly populated events, we want to be there to ensure there is nothing that happens and that the community can expect a safe environment. So all that said is, I would still expect a increased police presence if we were to host some event, but I would be concerned about, again, people from other cities coming into Milpitas and they're going to be in our parks and our streets as well.
Yes, I completely understand, Chief. Thank you for that information. And before I go to my colleagues here, I do see virtual hands. I'll conclude, I guess, hopefully conclude my statement here, my input here, by just saying, if we can monitor our neighboring cities here in the county, if other cities are, especially general law cities, are keeping their independence alive, I would love to be in stride there. All right, next up here with the virtual hand, I'm looking at it going down the list. Next up here, Vice Mayor Nunez.
Thank you very much. So do we have somebody still here from the fire department?
We do.
Renee, we do. So my understanding,
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciated you, Chief, telling us about the police department side. One of the things I recall being told that we have quite a presence from fire up in the hills, which I had never thought about. So I just would like somebody from fire to talk to us about if we had the firework display, what that means to them. Hi, Chief.
Hey, how are you? Hey, Mayor.
Great.
Mayor. Sorry, I missed a little bit of your question there, but I heard the end part of it, and to echo Chief Corpus's concerns related to conducting the event, there is a significant amount of staff time and resources that are dedicated to this event, both through our on-duty staff, off-duty staff, our OES department, and our explorers all participate as part of this event to help coordinate and make sure the event goes off in a safe manner. It's not directly related to the hillside and fire concerns, but more related to keeping the area directly surrounding the fireworks and the fallout zone and any possible incidents that may occur there, and keeping the people that are attending the event safe.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. I was just looking for if we had, if we say we're going to keep it and the fireworks show, but not have an event, would there still would be a cost for overtime and all that. It just wouldn't be as large, correct? Is that how I would take? That's what I'm taking that to mean.
Well, there's also the pre-event, you know, all the things that we have to do from a fire prevention side related to the provider that's putting on the show. We have to inspect all of their setup and have our staff present during the setup, after the setup, and then ensuring that the fallout zone is in place. So both prior to the event, during the event, and then after the event, there's an impact to staff and to not just the fire department, but all departments within the city related to putting on this event.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chief. So is Walter still there someplace?
He is.
I see him on still, yeah.
So if I could, so I'll ask the question, or should I wait till he shows up
He's
so I
up.
don't lose the first part?
He's up now. Go ahead. Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, so so it's about the budget planning, Walter. It was when Renee said at the latter part of her presentation that she was looking at keeping everything in place and then coming back mid-year with the budget change then based on better information. That's how I interpreted all that. Is that the way you're instructing all of the departments?
No, the recreation with the events, they are usually planning throughout the year. Excuse me. And the classes, that's a different consideration. We don't know how many classes they're going to offer over the summer. We don't know whether we're allowed to offer classes, but we don't want to take away the budgetary resources from the recreation department and therefore not support our community as much as we can.
Okay, so are there going to be monthly savings when they don't offer classes that you're going to capture and put someplace?
Well, there's two sides with recreation. They generate revenue, so we will not get the revenue, and we also will not have the expense to some degree. If we do instructor classes, we don't have to pay for the instructors, and we don't get the revenue additionally from those classes. So once as it evolves, what we will plan to do at mid-year, we will to save those funds and then come back to the council, and if there are savings, indeed, put them into reserve or for other purposes.
So do you think it's going to be more of a push where it just equals out, levels out, or do you think that we will have spent more than we would have gotten in revenue, or the other way around?
It depends on the activity, and Renee knows that better. Okay. Some activities are 100% cost recovery. Some we make a little bit of money. Others we actually subsidize. It really depends what kind of classes and activities we offer. A 4th of July event, obviously there's no revenue at all and would be purely expenditures.
So so I'm treating this as part of the budget process. That's really what I'm doing. So one of the things that I think was stated at the start of this was of the emergency itself, is that we were going to freeze all the hiring. So first, is that still true?
So what we are doing is, what the city manager is doing is, we have a hiring review committee between the assistant city manager, me, and the HR director. And we'll review before even a position is posted, We will review the necessity for the position, evaluate it, how is it essential to provide city services, how many vacancies we have in each department, and based on that, we decide to move forward with hiring or not hiring.
So it's not true. We don't have a hiring freeze.
We held back the hiring of about 20 positions, which we are currently not filling.
So how many are we filling?
How many in the pipeline? I would have to look at it. I don't know the exact number. Do you know? Maybe Ashwini knows, but I am not. I can't tell you exactly how many positions we're currently in the recruitment process.
Yeah, we would have to get back to you with the number, but there were some that were already underway or we'd made offers that we are moving forward. And then, as we had mentioned earlier, some positions that are essential both to this emergency or to critical operations, we are moving forward, like police officers and some other key positions. So we can provide that information as to how many are being filled right now.
Okay. Well, I think that, so I keep going back to yours as where we're starting, Renee. It's good to always be first, right? Don't you feel it's good to be first?
It does.
It does. So public safety for me always makes sense to exclude that. So somebody's fixing something somewhere. My sense is that I understood that we were going to replace police officers, firefighters, those kind of positions. I didn't understand those to be ones that we were going to have a freeze on. I'm interested now that that statement included others that I've not heard about. Maybe the other council members have. So now I look at your department and it makes me wonder how many positions have been considered essential that we might be filling and which ones aren't, and what's the reason for that? Because that's never been stated publicly, at least to me. I look at all those lists of functions we're not going to have, and I agree that those that are going to cause people to come together, we really want to think through. We don't want to put persons in harm's way, but at the same time, I really want to be open about and transparent about why persons are going to be replaced and not. There's going to be an impact on all those persons that when we don't replace somebody, that work's going to go someplace, or somebody's going to tell us that we don't need that work done. And if that work is attached to those functions we're not going to do anymore, then that makes sense to me. But if that work's going to continue, it doesn't make sense to me. So to me, this is strictly a budgeting process, part of the budgeting process. So I would be concerned if you were to tell me we're suddenly not going to hire 2 or 3 police officers. That would be a big concern to me. I'm interested in as Walter and Ashwini said, that you have a list now that someone considers essential that we've not seen, or at least that I've not seen. So there's going to be reduction someplace, right? Right, City Manager?
We're talking about reduction. We're talking about reduction of positions, unfilled positions.
I'm just saying reductions in dollars. And so we're looking to make sure that that we put dollars where they're most effective and where they're best used.
There's absolutely, you're absolutely correct.
Okay, so
there's going to be reduction in dollars.
Right. So I'm just hoping that as we go through this, as what Renee is doing, every department is doing, justifying why they're keeping something and why they're not. But more important to me, at the end of the day, it's people. And if we're not filling a spot, but we're filling another one, if it's because someone's decided this one is essential and this one is not, that someone has explained that at least in some fashion to the council as a whole. Because these programs that are going to go away, I like to be able to explain it. And I think it has an impact on myself, on negotiations and employee morale. And so if there's a list someplace of jobs we decided are not essential, I'd like to see it in whatever form that's supposed to be in. But at this point, I trust Renee to know what things we can do differently with regard to program. So I'm willing to look at that. July 4th, I think unlike the mayor, you're never going to find me jumping on the bandstand. I don't care how often you push me. I am not going to do that. But I'll be in the very back snapping my fingers because that's the only thing I can do. But I know enough community members to know that's the one thing they go to all year, that one thing. So if there's a way to make that happen, we should look at that as best we can. If there's ways to save people's jobs, that's my same way. If I feel that same way, we should make that happen. As I heard Walter, 3 persons deciding if that's essential or not, doesn't feel that way to me. As one person speaking, that doesn't feel that transparent to me. So those are my thoughts. If this is the start of a budgeting process, Walter doesn't feel good. And these are tough times. They're going to flow over. I would expect us to start in a way that everybody can point to it and say, I may not like it, but I understand how they got there. And that doesn't feel that way to me right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor. Appreciate you. Next up, we're going here, Councilmember Montano with the virtual hand on the list here. Councilmember Montano has her microphone muted. She may be adjusting it. Councilmember Montano, calling upon your
Okay,
virtual
sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
and
yes.
here I was yapping away. And you guys next time. Well,
Carry on, please.
Thank you. So thank you, Mayor, and thank you, everyone, for speaking. And thank you, Renee, for that presentation. Yeah, this is a game changer. We're all adapting to this new environment, and we're not getting in the revenues because people don't have a job anymore or not working. And so I know we're in a pre-recession, so there's going to be some big changes. And I try to be optimistic. I don't want to be a pessimist, but it's too early to tell. And I know everything's changing. It's sort of surreal. Now we are doing virtual teaching, virtual meetings, virtual everything. So with the mayor's recommendation of having a 4th of July fireworks display, I'm sorry, I would love to have that, but I'm not going to go with that because it's too much of a risk for people coming in from other cities. And how do we know that they're going to be carriers? Because now you can be asymptomatic and not and be a COVID carrier. So that's really scary. And so yeah, we're all changing, we're all adapting. So with that, when I'm not really for that. Well, I'd love to, but I just got to be realistic.
Do you want to keep the option exploratory to see where we're at in 60, 90 days?
Okay, well, yeah, that'd be
Is
good.
today a determination for the future?
And so what I'd like to recommend is having some banners and flags for 4th of July, even for Memorial Day and Veterans Day, out in the frontage of the City Hall, to let the public know that, you know, these are patriotic days. I'd like to have that. And then the median on Calaveras, I'd like to see our city put flags there. I'm like, way back, maybe 5 years ago, I used to do that. And with our police department, we put some American flags on the median. So I'd like the city to do that, to show that we are still, you know, celebrating our historic patriotic days. But I think showing the public out in, you know, something at City Hall, you know, decorating City Hall with flags and those old time, remember those old time banners back in the 1800s, you know, something like that at City Hall would look really nice. So that's what I'd like to see, to show our patriotism and celebrate those days. And I do agree with the virtual. That's the way we have to go. That's the future now. And keep up the great work. And I know we are going to be in a pre-recession, so we have to cut back. That's just the, you know, we are stewards of the public's money, and we have to be conscientious of how we spend the money wisely. And so anyway, that's what I'd like to do is for our patriotic days, have banners out there, flags, and show the people that we are still celebrating. That's it. Thank you
very much, Councilmember Montano. Next up, we're going to Councilmember Dominguez.
Thank you very much, Mayor, for the time. Thank you so much, Councilmember Montano, for those sentiments. I definitely believe that that's one of the biggest holidays in the city of Milpitas. And I just have a couple of questions. Renee, could you tell me what's the cost of the fireworks show? If you have a total cost, and then maybe if you could split it, not necessarily itemize it, but maybe just staff time and resources, and then actual like things, you know, like contracts and stuff, and then what's the total, if that's something that you could share with us.
Sure. So for total contracts for the event, it's about $71,000, and the contracts make up of, and not completely, the fireworks themselves, which is about $23,000 to $24,000. Then the next largest cost is the restrooms that we actually have to purchase for the amount of people that come in, and the ADA stations and hand washing stations. So those are two of the largest contract services for the event. Then there's about $10,000 or so in just supplies. And ambulance is also part of that contract service. We do have an ambulance on site for the event. The staffing is, I believe it's within about $60,000, within the $60,000 range. That's across the departments. We captured that data last year and the year before. That was not, I don't know that included any recent negotiated raises. So the number could be a little bit higher for this year. So all in all, it's about probably about $150,000 or so for the day. And the day before, which the fire chief was good to point out. There's a lot to do when you set up those fireworks, and the fire zone and the protection of the site is very important.
Thank you very much for that info. Thank you very much for that information and for sharing $150,000. You know, one of the things that I have found working for a law enforcement agency is that it's really important that when we make policy, we are very strict on the direction and that we give that message across the board. For example, if we close playgrounds and we don't close the parks, then it's really hard for our officers to do enforcement in that playground. I mean, because the park is open. So if you see individuals there, how do you know they're in the playground? And so I use that analogy with this particular event, because as much as I want to say yes, and I love the fireworks show, it's one of my favorite. It's the one time a year that I get together with my nieces and my nephews, and we go out there and we're super excited with our flags, and it creates amazing memories. But when we are dealing with a situation at hand, and I know the intense work that our staff needs to put in, I would like to treat this as an emergency. And it is an emergency. We may not know where we're at in 5 days, 30 days, in 60 days, but I do know that we need to, I'm listening to what Vice Mayor Nunez is saying, and I really like what you said regarding budget. And that's how I'm treating this, is how are we going to, like Councilmember Montano said, be the stewards of public funding. I really like that. And how are we going to do that? Prioritizing, for me, it's the safety of our community. And right now, those who are being stretched thin are our emergency first responders. And when I look at the list of essential services, as much as I want to put a fireworks show up there, it's just, I can't do it, because it doesn't just provide justification on how that $150,000 is going to provide health services and ensure that our community stays healthy. If anything, I do believe that it's going to provide an avenue for groups and clusters to come together. And as much as we could segregate just Cardozo Park or any other park and put fencing around it, the truth of the matter is that we can't control what happens in our neighborhood streets, and we can't control human behavior. We're finding that now. And if we put a fireworks show, then we're encouraging the behavior of clusters to come together. And so for the sake of the health and safety of Milpitas, I unfortunately can't support the justification of $150,000 allocated when we have businesses that are going under. And so with that, I waive my time, and I thank you guys for the time.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Dominguez. Next up, we'll go to Councilmember Finn. Get your mute function there. Yes.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I think, you know, in terms of it being a celebration, there's not a better way, I think, to celebrate patriotism by doing things that contribute towards the community need, right? So if we're saving lives, I think that is something that is plenty to celebrate about. That said, I think if we did a celebration with a fireworks show or whatever, but also if we included a partnered up with community organizations and hosted a blood drive, for example, you know, there is a need for blood donations, and that's something that we can partner up with the Red Cross, you know, and then it wouldn't be just a show just for spectacles, you know, then it would be a call to action for members of the community who want to do something, who are healthy, and want to contribute towards us meeting the moment here. And that really does take you know, a call to action there. So I am okay, and I'm actually supportive of the idea of having a version of a celebration. Of course, it won't be the one that we're used to. You know, if we can include in there that aspect, that element where we're doing something to address this pandemic, because we can do more than just to tell everybody, hey, stay at home. You know, there are some people who can contribute to this.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Fan. And next up here, we have Vice Mayor Nunez.
Thank you. So if I can take some of the things that were just said, and Renee, help me if, when did you say that the deadline is to tell whoever sells fireworks if we're in or out?
So we have a contract with Fireworks America right now for this event and Lunar New Year. They do the fireworks and the firecrackers for us. So they start, and I'm going to use their terminology, they start packing the truck now in the next couple weeks for the shows. And so we have to let them know fairly quickly if we're going to do this or not, and notify them of the change and see what we can get credit for or move, et cetera. So a lot of cities are dealing with this right now, by the way. So we're not alone. They're all figuring out how to do it. I will say though that there are very few providers for pyrotechnics. And so if we, and I'll say it with respectfully, try to do this at the last minute, we will not find another provider to do the pyro. So it is a decision that needs to be made, in the very near future so that we can adequately provide whatever it is that council directs us to do.
So I always like a challenge. Is that what you just gave us as the challenge? That you just did?
I was hoping it was information.
No, okay. Well, so I listened to Councilman Fan, and I think he's right to the point that we have had it a certain way for an awful long time, that celebration. And maybe this one year we have to do it different. If this is the one we all can point to for some reason, maybe it is really an opportunity to do it, still have it, but in a different way. Instead of lots of fireworks, one, something that's symbolic, that we do other things around it. The giving of blood was one that I am used to doing every 9 weeks that I can't do anymore because I can't get out of this house yet. I didn't mean that to sound as bad as it did, but there's other ways that persons celebrate something that is near and dear to them. Maybe this is the one time we try to think of those ways, including a scaled down demonstration in fireworks, and to understand that instead of letting the market drive us, that we try to drive the market, helping the other cities understand that we shouldn't be letting 4 or 5 pyrotechnic companies decide for us what we're going to do, but we tell them what we're going to do. That's the challenge. What is it we want to celebrate? Maybe the fact that we're coming down to the part where we're almost done, and we're going to put this, televise this live on YouTube. I don't even know if that's the right way to say that, by the way. But so that everybody in Milpitas can see that from their home. They don't have to go to one spot. But I think there's ways to look at this to make this one special because of what's going on. And I'd like to take the opportunity just to do that. And if we can't figure that out in a couple of weeks, then maybe we don't do it then. But I believe, still believe we have the staff that can figure that out. And so we celebrated, maybe we do something on the 3 billboards that are on the side of the highway. Maybe that's what we use, maybe we resurrect one on this other side of town, and so we can have it on both sides of the city, that it's up in whatever you call those things. But I just think it's an important enough event that it shouldn't be either or. And I've seen you work miracles before. And I'd rather have hope in you than all those other persons trying to sell us that stuff. That's for me. That's what I would rather give you some time to figure out something else to come back with that allows this city to celebrate in a special way during this special time. And that's because of what Councilman Fan just talked about.
Thank you so much, Vice Mayor, and I appreciate the comments from my colleagues, Vice Mayor and Councilmember Fan. My recommendation tonight is to not actually have the event full throttle, or even to have the event if that's not in the best interest of our public health. My recommendation tonight is to keep the option alive, and I appreciate my colleagues who share the same sentiments, as we don't know what will really be before us in these coming weeks and months. And we can rely at the direction of the council on Renee's leadership to keep that opportunity there for us. I heard the word opportunity. And if we can really, as a city, do our best to ensure we can have this 4th of July holiday as best and safe as possible, it's worth doing, even with a just fireworks display, with careful sectioning of our parks and public properties. And July is a few months from now, and I'm hopeful that our country and our city will be in a much better place. I want to kindly recommend again that we keep this hopeful, we keep this alive. And I know I have my faith in city staff and Renee to meet with our pyrotechnicians folks, whom we've all got to know over the years, who've worked with us for history, very great family people, if I may, and really to see what our timeline is, our window of opportunity of sorts, to keep options available. I know we won't be making any decisions as to how July will be tonight, and I believe there's some support amongst my colleagues for that, but I do want to ensure there's a fair and equitable discussion here. In terms of the budgeting, I heard a concern about the budgeting, the cost, the fiscal impact of it. And Renee, when is the last time our city did not have fireworks for the 4th of July?
Well, I've been working them for over 25 years. So we have not taken a break during the recession. Like our police chief mentioned, we received private donations for that year. And we were the only city for a number of years that held it. And those numbers were quite large because we had Bay Area attendance. So I've been at every single one since I've been 16 working. So I don't know when we ever had a break, to be honest. But I think the guidance tonight from council to look at what those opportunities are to celebrate the community this year, and what that might look like. We can definitely return to council and let you know what we think we can come up with.
Yes, no wonder we have the best fireworks. Thank you, Renee. And I mean that. We do have a budget for the 4th of July. We've had it for decades, and with the possibility of a responsible and safe scaled back fireworks display, which I'm sure the community is in great support of. I'm sure the budget for it will surely go down. It's kind of early to make that assumption, but I have a belief that the budget for the fireworks display, just the day itself in the city of Milpitas, will go down in seeing that we'll need probably require less staff, and there won't be any folks on public property. I'm sure there will be costs with securing a fence along the Kennedy Drive and Calaveras and the little outlet into North Park Victoria as well. Standard to all the other fencing around the base of the fireworks. And I'm sure obviously there will be a public safety personnel cost, but it is my early belief that the budget for the event will actually go down. And so those are some notes worth being spoken. I want to go next to, if you have a virtual hand and you're not requiring it, I see multiple. Before I go down the list here, I ask you, yes. Thank you very much. Councilmember Dominguez.
I'm going to lower the hand before I forget. So thank you so much, Mayor, for that, for your words and for the time. I had a question. So I just want some clarification. Renee, what is the date exactly that you need to know to sign the contract and make this happen again?
So the contract is in place already. So it's a 1-year contract with rolling options. So we've already moved forward with this next 2021. So we'd have to look at the contract and to make sure we have the right dates to either cancel this event and get a credit for later in the year, or if there's a certain percentage that we would have to pay out to the contractor. We'd have to work with purchasing on that.
Okay.
So I don't have the exact date for you tonight. Yeah.
Okay, no worries. So if definitely if you could bring that back, I think that would definitely help. I really like Councilmember Montano's idea on the flags. I think that's a great idea and an idea that wouldn't cost so much budget. For a point of clarification, Mayor, you stated that if the county restricted any fireworks show, you would then move with the recommendation not to have the firework. I just want to clarify that.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much for the question. I appreciate the opportunity to provide information. Yeah, absolutely. I think when there's county, state, federal guidance, I think a couple things. One, our city doesn't have many more options. I think it's very, very rare that I would ever go against, as one person, guidance from a higher authority. And so, yeah, absolutely. And that's why I think it's really imperative that we keep open the exploration of the 4th of July as to have those discussions with our peer cities, with our county, the best county in America, to see what type of guidance will be provided. And for us not to have those discussions with our peers, as well as with the county, is not advisable from my purview.
Okay, perfect. And so, you know, you said one word that I'm always for is opportunity. So I'm open to the opportunity, but I do trust the leadership of Supervisor Cindy Chavez and Supervisor Dev Cortese, who does represent us. And I would love to have the opportunity to speak with them on what they think on this item, because I do think it's really, really important for us to have a voice that overlaps and that is speaking the same tune when we talk to our community. And the tune that I've been hearing is really to stay away from group gatherings. And so at this time, I am gonna go ahead and abstain from voting from this item because I don't have all the information. And as much as I want this firework display, I do want to, again, give the respect that our president of our county deserves, which is Cindy Chavez, and definitely have the opportunity to speak with other supervisors as well who are leading our county and working around the clock. And I want to be very respectful of our chief, who is knowledgeable and is our commander-in-chief in safety. The sentiments that I have heard today is that it's not safe. And so I want to support that notion. And so for tonight, I am going to be abstaining from this vote.
I
Thank you.
appreciate you, Councilmember Dominguez, for your input and how are you concluding your statements. I do want to remind you, Councilmember Dominguez, and all in attendance here virtually that this recommendation that I'm putting forth is to actually have those discussions and with our peers in our county. So you're abstaining from the point that you're trying to make. And I just want to be clear for the record, the recommendation is to do what you're saying. Your recommendation coming from you is to have those discussions with those leaders you've listed. And so you're abstaining from your own recommendation. Okay.
Actually, if I could, I don't know, Chris, if this has ever happened, but I would like to make a phone call. Could that happen right now and bring someone in? Or is that something that we could bring back? Because this is definitely really important for our community and for us to move this forward, saying we're gonna put an opportunity out there. I don't see, with all due respect, Mayor, your perspective being in that. My perspective is the information that you have brought forward today to do motion doesn't state that you have talked to any of our county representatives. It just states that you would like to see a fireworks show. And so right now it sounds like there's time sensitive issues going with this contract. And because there is a budget of 150,000 that we really have to prioritize.
Yeah, it's funded. We have the contract. It's already funded.
Right, but it sounds like we would be able to stop this contract and whatever money is already. How much money has already been spent, Renee?
No money has been spent so far.
Okay, so there's been no money's been spent. So this is where I keep going back and forth, Mayor, and as much as I want to support you, I really have to go back to something you just stated, which is my justification on why moving this forward. It's not an essential service and it's putting the risk of the health of Milpitians in place. So again, I move towards a no vote or an abstention. I do want to give some time. I could see Vice Mayor Nunez's hand going up. So I definitely want to be respectful of what he says because he always has knowledge and wisdom that allows me to think outside of the box. And I definitely want to be a collective voice because that is so important right now. So I definitely want to yield my time to Vice Mayor Nunez.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Dominguez. I hate to break the bad news to you, Vice Mayor, but on the list of virtual hands, we have Councilmember Montano next.
Okay, I'll wait.
Yeah, I was waiting patiently.
So am I.
Down the list, just going down the list.
All right, yeah. I've already stated my reasons, and I agree with our chief. It's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be, but I really think that you had to rethink this, Mayor, and go with caution, move with caution, because first of all, it's expensive. I'd rather have, if we're going to be spending that money, I'd rather spend that money to provide rent, to put it in our rent relief program where families are hurting and they lost their job and they need help with the rent. I'd rather put it in a small business that needs some assistance to pay their rent for their landlord. So I just really feel that, I'm with you. I would love to have a fireworks show, but sometimes we have to just, we have to sacrifice and just say, you know what, this is not the year to do it. Let's be creative and do some other ways how we can celebrate. But I'm really begging you to, I'm asking you to rescind this because I really feel that this is not the right time. It will put people at risk, and I'm really asking you. to rethink this. And if you're saying that it's still under discussion, but when you think about it, how much time do we really have? Our next city council meeting is in May. So that's 2 weeks from now. And there's a certain timeline. So I would like to decide today, you know, if we can. So I really think that this is not a good idea. I'm just putting that out there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Montano. Now we're going to Vice Mayor Nunez.
Thank you. Wanted to make sure that,
Oh, and I love your idea, Vice Mayor, about putting the fireworks on those digital billboards. That's awesome. I like that. Thank you.
oh, you're welcome. I try to have one good idea meeting if I can. So first I want to make real sure I didn't miss something. There isn't anything to vote on yet, is there, Chris? I didn't remember a motion yet.
I don't believe we have a motion, but we're
Okay.
looking for general direction if there's any to provide.
That's right. So I'd like to take just one step back first. Second, I need to have you, Renee, walk through the contract for me again. Go ahead.
So I was just reading it while you guys were speaking. So there is in the contract, you know, there is no fault for default if there's acts of God and war and that standard clause. So what we can do 10 days notice. However, we would be responsible for any services, work, or product purchased up until that point. And so 10 days before, we'd at that point be pretty much buying the fireworks anyway. So what the contractor has reached out to Milpitas and the other cities that they're working for is, you know, to let them know between April 15th and May 1st what the decision is, so that they can at least be ready for whatever it is that the city decides. So there would be some costs incurred, a deposit of sorts, or any work done up into that time, but that's what the contractor's asking at this point.
That's what he's wanting, right?
That's what he wants. Yeah, that's what he wants, but we do have we do have the ability for a 10-day notice. Yeah.
Okay. Have you looked at that contract, Chris?
Some time ago when it was executed, but I'm happy to take a look at it again and let the council know my thoughts.
Okay, so there's a big difference between what I think the contract means versus what you think it means, and between what attorneys thinks it means. So I would think that we need to have our own attorney look at it and tell them what we really are on the hook for. I think that we can buy more time than the time he's telling you. He's hoping that we will buy what he's telling us. It's in his best interest, or their best interest. It's an entity. But at the end of the day, I believe that it comes down to what do we want for our residents? And what I thought I just heard is all of you agreeing on what we wanted. I heard you agree, Mayor, with the two council persons. You all agreed we wanted the opportunity to go talk to people. We wanted the opportunity to see what other cities were doing. So I think giving the motion could be direction to staff, because there's a whole bunch of other things on that list, Renee, leading up to 4th, that I'm thinking what I thought I heard was that we're all in agreement with all of that. It's just this last part, if you can hold on to it. 2 weeks is what they're giving you anyway, right? At least. Chris, that should give you enough time to go and look at that contract and see if we could buy more time or not. I mean, you know, what is your opinion, legal opinion, on what's our liability? Steve, to go and check with the county and see what's advice are they going to be given to the other cities, and then bring it all back to us on just that one day. And on that day, we could then talk to amongst ourselves and say, here's where we're at. That every city is going to have something or nothing. Or Renee, here's your recommendation for that day based on all of that input. And that's what I thought. I heard the mayor saying, yes, that's what he thought we were going to do. That's what I thought I heard the ask was. And I thought everybody was in agreement with that. So I wasn't quite sure why, unless I was mishearing it. So that's what I thought. We were saying yes to everything before that. Just this last part, if we could go ask all of our partners and see if we could in 2 weeks get it done. And if so, it's done. And if not, then we would know that there's no other options. But 2 weeks, Renee, I have faith in you.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor. And I think I'm tracking what you're saying. That's what I'm hearing. Let's just keep hope alive. I think we need hope during these times more than ever. Let's keep hope that our country and our city will be in a good place sooner than later. And let's look at the opportunity. Let's come together as a valley. We pledge allegiance to the flag, and let's keep hope alive. I do see a virtual hand, Councilmember Montano.
Oh, I forgot to put it down.
All right.
Remind me when
watching
I
ya.
talk.
So that would be my motion. That would be my motion.
Okay, if there's no further requests by my colleagues, we have a motion by Vice Mayor Nunez. We have a second by Mayor Tran. All in favor, roll call style. Councilmember Fan.
Aye.
Councilmember Montano.
Respectfully, no.
Councilmember Dominguez.
In the safety of our community, it's a respectfully no.
Vice Mayor Nunez.
Yes.
And for me, it's a yes. And so the motion passes. The motion's carried. I look forward to the collaboration, and so that we can do our due diligence and safely with public health, see if there's an opportunity per the guidance of the county, 100%, and in accordance with our peers throughout the valley, Santa Clara County cities, and even the great state of California, to see if we can let freedom ring safely, 100%. Thank you so much, Renee, and I appreciate staff and the work that will be put in for this, and to see where we're at several weeks from now. And I want to thank folks that are listening. You know who you are. Thank you so much. That's the 4th of July piece. We're going to go back to the original agenda item. If folks have any other concerns with the post-COVID-19 recreation and community service programs and events transition plan, anything new, my colleagues, now would be your time. Any concerns? I thought the presentation was very, very clear. And it's going through the summer, and I'm sure we'll revisit this coming out of our recess. Okay, I want to look to the virtual hands. I don't see any. Okay. With that being said, I believe our council has received Renee's report and provided direction. And I want to thank you, Renee. Always positivity coming from Recreation Services, good times or bad. Thank you so much, Renee.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Thank you, Renee.
All right. This is our special city council meeting. I'm going to go ahead and adjourn it now. Let's go to closed session and keep this evening moving, if that's okay. Chris?
Mayor, we may have to open up the regular meeting through Zoom.
Oh.
And then from there, you log off that. I'll text all of you the number for closed session, so you have it handy. But once we log into Zoom for the regular meeting, we'll log out, call into the closed session, and then we'll get you back quickly.